But it's like 10 o'clock hits. It's like, well, I'm ready to start. It's like, that's great, but we're still talking. We got Eddie. ¿Qué pasó? How you doing, brother? I haven't seen you in a while. Staying out of trouble? All right, you're on camera, so you better tell the truth, all right? Are you still talking about Taco Pellenque? Goodness sakes.
I don't know why they like to make fun of me.
Hey, Bobby, we decided Bros is going to Build-A-Burger next month.
Yeah. Bring in my lunch.
That's right. We thought, you know what? Y'all should just bring the trailer over here on Wednesdays, you know. And yo, yes.
I think I'll go to Bros next time it comes around.
All right, we'll get you a ride.
We got to put him on the reminder list.
Well, not just a reminder list, because I don't think Joanne would let him drive. Yeah. We got sheets in the back in case anybody wants one. Stuff's not working. There we go. It's great seeing everybody. I know everybody's like in jackets and you know what happened? It was like 70 something today. You know, it was 7. Oh, sorry, 7. It was passing.
And then with the breeze, it felt like
See, that's the breeze that kills you. You know, I know.
You're not immune to cold weather like I am.
I used to be before I came down here. Then I turned into a pansy. And it's going to happen to y'all. Y'all watch. Yes, it will. Well, that's this year. Wait till you're here a couple of years. I was like that too. You know, I didn't wear a jacket at all the first year I was here. Then the next year I was like, man, it's cold. Yeah. I didn't say you wouldn't wear shorts. I would say you'd be cold.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if you choose to wear shorts when you're cold, that's your own mental state.
Wearing his shorts with felt lining.
Well, look at, he's already wearing sandals with socks. I mean, he's already. Well, we'll go ahead and get started, you know, before it gets any deeper. As we get started tonight, Bobby, would you lead us in a prayer, please, sir? Amen. Thank you. If you'd like to flip with me to Revelation 14. So we're going to be, it's where we're going to be tonight. Of course, as you know, if you've been coming to this class, we're going to be all over. But the part of Revelation we're looking at is Revelation 14. Now, if you remember Revelation 13 from last week, we had a dragon calling up a couple of beasts to help in his cause. We also had people falling to the lure of the beast and getting marked with the 666 and worshiping the beast, and all this stuff. So the question we might be tempted to ask is, if you have the dragon who's put the power behind the beast, and the beasts are able to lure people away with false teaching and parlor tricks and lies and deceit, why is God just sitting back and doing nothing? What is God going to do about this? Well, he starts doing something about it in Revelation 14. When we get to Revelation 14, we're going to have a series of heavenly retaliation. Because that's the thing. He's not going to sit back and do it. But I love the thought. I call it the Habakkuk thought. If you've ever read the minor prophet Habakkuk, it's one of my favorite books. Well, I love all the Bible, but the Habakkuk, it's a small book, something like 3-4 chapters, but it's very hard-hitting. Because that's Habakkuk's issue. Habakkuk looks around at his area and he says, people are sinful, evil goes unchecked, evil goes unpunished. You're sitting back, you're not doing anything, God. What you going to do about it? God says, don't worry, I'm going to do something that you will not believe. Well, what is that? I'm going to send the Babylonians down to come and take you away. But worse than we are. But it's that whole thing. We can we can look around and see how bad things are. And that's if we choose to look at the world through worldly eyes. And if we do that, we get cranky. And then we start turning the blame of God and say, God, why don't you do something about it? When the truth is, God could be doing something about it as we speak. But we're so wrapped up in what we think, this is the Joe problem, we get so wrapped up into thinking what we think God should do that we miss out on what God's actually doing. And so when you read Revelation 13, you see all these beasts and everything, you say, well, God's not doing anything. He is. It's coming out in Revelation 14. Good evening. Although people come in late, they walk in like this, straight armed. It's to quiet the dead. It's to quiet the noises. Great seeing everybody. We're in Revelation 14. So we get to Revelation chapter 14, verse 1. It says this. It says, Then I looked, and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. All right, so here we go. We have the beast and the dragons that are running rampant, doing whatever they want to. But a group appears. Another group appears. Hey, Paula. And the story of this group is in the details. So let's break it down. He looks and he beholds where? Okay, Mount Zion. Now, what is Mount Zion? Oh, we like to throw around, we're marching to Zion, but do we know where we're marching to? New Jerusalem. Mount Zion was a nickname for Jerusalem, but again, we're in AD 96. Temple was destroyed back in 70. So that sucker gone long since. So what are we going to say? What's the idea of seeing someone on Mount Zion? What is Mount Zion? Oh, something better. Exactly. We're not talking about earthly stuff anymore. We're not interested in the physical location of Israel on the globe anymore. What we're worried about, what we want to be a part of, is the heavenly Israel. What we want to be a part of is the heavenly temple. What we want to be a part of is the body of Christ. That's where the Mount Zion comes in. Mount Zion is where God is. Okay, so he saw Mount Zion, and who did he see standing there? The Lamb. Who's the Lamb? Jesus. Now, this goes back to earlier in Revelation chapter 5, when the Lamb is introduced. And that Lamb, the one that looked like it was slain, is the most worthy person in that throne room outside of God. And with him were whom? The 144,000 who have been marked back in Revelation 7. Now in Revelation 7, we read about the 144,000 being marked by God. In Revelation chapter 13, we've read about the people who followed the beast being marked by the 666. So again, everybody's going to be marked by someone. Do we want to be marked by God? Or do we want to be marked by the beast? Or do we want to be marked by the Lamb? We want to be marked by the beast. The 144,000 who were marked. Now again, but the 144,000 were the Jewish equation of the followers of Christ. Okay. And then it talks about, they were marked on their hands and on their foreheads. And then in verse 2 it says, And I heard a voice from heaven like the roar of many waters, and like the sound of loud thunder. The voice I heard was like the sound of a harpist playing on their harps, and they were singing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and before the elders. So, what are they doing? Yeah, they're singing. What are they singing? The new song, as opposed to the old song. I remember when I was a kid, I was raised in a church, they had the old hymn, the new song. I looked on the date. The new song was written back in 1940-something. I was like, there's nothing new about this. What is the new song? Actually, the Song of the Redeemed. You know, we've already had one new song in the book of Revelation. All the way back in Revelation chapter 5, they sang a new song saying, "Worthy are you to take the scroll, to open its seals, for you were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God, from every tribe and language and people and nation. And you have made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they shall reign on the earth." That was the new song that was introduced back in Revelation 5. Now, what does this new song entail that's from Revelation 5? Who is it to? Worthy of you to take the scroll and open its seals. Who is that talking about again? Okay, it was talking about Jesus. Okay, that's what. So it's to Jesus. For you were slain, and by your blood you ransomed the people for God. Talking about Jesus' sacrifice. From every tribe and language and people and nation. For all people. And you have made them the kingdom and priests to our God, and they shall reign on the earth. So again, his final victory, final redemption, and also making us his nation of priests. It's the new song. Now, Exodus chapter 15 is the old song. If you go back and read that song, that's the song that was sung by the Israelites after the Exodus. And the waters go down, and they're finally freed from Pharaoh and Pharaoh's Egypt. But it was still a song of redemption. It was a song of God saving his people from Egypt. But now we have the new song of redemption, in which is sang in the throne room of God. The link between the two songs is freedom, redemption, God fighting for his people.
There's a group called Craig and Dean.
Right.
They sing a song that's sort of like this. God's favorite song of all is the song of the Redeemed.
Yeah.
All his songs, that's his favorite.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It is absolutely neat. Again, you know, we get bored with the church. We get bored with Christianity. We've forgotten something, because how much hard work did God put into the plan of salvation and into the foundation of the church? That's what it's all about. If we've fallen out of love with it, we're not doing something right. But who gets to learn the song? It's the 144,000 who get to learn the song. Now, what's so special about these people? It says no one can learn that song except the 144,000 who have been redeemed from the earth. Great word, redeemed. That's an old-fashioned Bible word. What does redeemed mean? It's bought back. You've been ransomed. That's the idea. Do what? Yes. It's the Jehovah's Witnesses. We talked about that when we introduced the idea of the 144,000 back in Revelation 7, because that's the call to Jehovah's Witness. You need to be saved so that you can be one of the 144,000. Lo and behold, that Jehovah's Witnesses number well into the millions. The odds are not in your favor on that. If you ask them about it, though, you know what they say? Well, it's 144,000 who get to go to heaven, but not all Jehovah's Witnesses want to go to heaven. They want to go to the new earth. Okay. High five, Will. Okay, so who are these 140? Because shall we say there were more Jews than 144,000? Yeah. Because again, that's if we're taking this number literally, which we're not necessarily supposed to do. But some people do. And that's why you got to look at it this way. If you were to take this number literally, I mean, goodness sakes, do we know how many people left Egypt? How many Jews left Egypt? It was over 1 million. It was over 1 million. What was it, like something like 650,000 men? That's not counting women or children. So, I mean, it was well over 1 million. But only 144,000 will make it. Goodness sakes, does this sound like grace? No, but again, if we're going to take it literally, no, but that's not what it's about. But look again, but there's a story here in these details. Now, no one can learn the song except the 144,000 who, okay, so it's, okay, there's some qualifications. who have been redeemed from the earth. So they've been ransomed from the earth, so they're followers of God. That's one. Two, it is these who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. Now, again, we talked about this back in Revelation 7, but if you ever get a Jehovah's Witness at your door and they start threatening the whole, well, if you don't listen to me, you're not going to make it to 144,000, and they're women, say, sorry, sweetheart, you out of luck. Because the 144,000 from the Bible, if you're going to take it literally, they were Jewish male virgins. So if you don't meet those qualifications, you's out of there. That's right. Now, they are not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. It is these who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been redeemed for mankind as firstfruits for God and the Lamb, and in their mouth no lie was found, for they were blameless. All right, so the whole virgin idea. Now you go back to Exodus chapter 19, verse 15. This is before God speaks and gives the Ten Commandments. So it's the preparation. They're standing outside of Mount Zion. God is about to speak to Israel. And God tells Moses to tell the Israelites for 3 days, prepare for this meeting. And one of the ways that you prepare is there should be no sexual relations going on in the camp for those 3 days leading up to that. Then you jump forward to Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 9. The Israelites were told to refrain from sexual intimacy before a certain battle took place. In other words, and some versions even say stay away from defiled things or from evil things, but the idea is sexual intimacy. Now, again, we're all grown-ups here. What is wrong with Bible-based sex? Nothing. So what's the problem here? What's going on here? What's the image? What's the idea? Distraction. That is the idea. You can see it with boxers. Boxers today who go into training, they'll refrain from sexual relationships with their wives for a period of months so that they can focus on their training. Our soldiers, before they went into war. If you're going to go fight a battle, can we have our minds thinking about home at that particular time? We have to sever that for a bit in order to focus on the war that we're in the midst of. This is the idea. There is nothing wrong with Bible-based sex. What's going on here is that God is treating the 144,000 as soldiers in God's army. That's who these people are. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Where did the Lamb go? To the cross, yes. Yes. If we're to follow, remember Jesus, the disciples arguing with Jesus, and Jesus trying to teach them what the Messiah really is. But what did Jesus say about picking up crosses and following him? That was the nature of that message. A cross was an instrument of death. It freaked the disciples out to hear that. If that was told in modern days, it would sound something along these lines. Whoever who doesn't follow me and stand in front of that bullet after it's fired is not worthy of me. That's like what Jesus told them. Whoever does not want to pick up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. To follow the Messiah is to follow the Messiah unto our deaths. That's the call we've been called to. And this is also how following Christ can become so much more real. I hope this has been one of the side effects of studying the book of Revelation and the choices that first century church had to make, and also looking around the world today and the choices that we might have to make one day. But it's the idea of being done with the games and to get down to what real obedience to Christ actually is. Following him wherever he goes. He also says that these have been redeemed from mankind as first fruits for God and the Lamb. How seriously did God take his first fruits? Yeah, very seriously. Flip back to Exodus 13. Exodus 13. In Exodus 13, verse 1, it says this. It says, the Lord said to Moses, consecrate to me all the firstborn, whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel, both of man and of beast is mine. And then you jump forward to verse 14. It says, and when in time to come your son asks you, what does this mean? You shall say to him, by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the house of slavery. For when Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of animals. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all the males that first opened the womb, but all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. It shall be a mark on your hand and frontlets between your eyes. For by a strong hand the Lord brought us up out of Egypt. There was so much that went, we've gone back to the 10 plagues a lot in this study, but there was so much that happened with God and versus Pharaoh. More than just the 10 plagues. I mean, God, we're told God hardened Pharaoh's heart so that Pharaoh would continue to pass the point of all good sense. But why? What was God trying to do with Egypt? Okay, that's one. Show the people his great power so that they can, again, you get to the end of the Old Testament and God's still kicking them back. You remember what I did for y'all in Egypt? That was a big deal. Okay, so show and then set up all that history. Yeah, that's one. What else was, why? Why give the plagues and then kill the firstborn and then drown the chariot corps in the Red Sea? I mean, what was going on here? Do what? Oh, it wasn't about repentance. How do we think God felt when Pharaoh ordered the deaths of the little Jewish babies? What made him mad? It was his people. Someone go to our people and start mistreating our people? Are we going to sit back and take it if we don't have to? God fought for his people, and he fought for his people in a very real way. Yes, God is love, but God is also judge, and God is also power. And it's all of those equally. God judged Egypt. God fought, and it was personal, and he was angry that Pharaoh would do that to his people. So God waged war. And so that's hardly fair, a God versus a man. Oh, how did Pharaoh view himself? As a God. It's like, you want to play this game? All righty. So the first fruits, that whole idea of the first fruits, that goes back to the 10th plague. That goes back to the death of the children and all this. And God redeeming the first fruits was a very big deal. And also going forward in time when he talks about giving, when he talks about sharing, give of your first fruits. So it's a recurring idea. But here we're told that the redeemed from mankind as first fruits. They're the first fruits of God and the Lamb. And in their mouth no lie was found, for they are blameless. So they're blameless in their behavior. And we say, well, what kind of perfect men are there? Because the Bible tells us, no one is righteous. No, not one. So how can he have this? Well, this is a comparison. Because you go back to, remember what they were blameless and they were found with no lie. Now jump back to Revelation 13, verses 5 through 6, which we read last week, where we talk about the beast, and look at the comparison between what we just read about the first fruit of God and then the beast. The beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and in his dwelling. So, the comparison though is between those who belong to God and those who don't belong to God. The difference should be the blameless behavior. It was Peter who talks about how if we're going to be servants of Christ, we're going to suffer. In various ways, we're going to suffer. Don't be surprised by this when it happens. This is part of being God's people. But just because we're made to suffer does not then give us license to just act like heathens. In fact, we're supposed to maintain our righteousness so that those who do try to get us into trouble, they're the ones who look foolish because of the behavior of the saved. It's very important, the behavior of the Christian. So the punchline to all of this, this description of the 144,000 and all that. The punchline is that its imagery all comes from the Jewish background. Remember in Revelation, you got Jewish influence and Gentile influence. But this 144,000 is rooted and steeped in Jewish imagery. The 144,000, they were made up from the 12 tribes of Israel. They're standing on Mount Zion. The first fruit idea, singing the new song in reference to the old song. I mean, it's all steeped in Jewish thought. But that only makes sense because anybody know what, if you don't, that's okay. I'm just throwing this out. If Romans chapter 1, verse 16 says, give you a hint. First to the Jew. Good. And then to the Gentile. That's been the pattern of the gospel. Romans chapter 1, verse 16, for I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is power of God of salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and then to the Greek, or to the Gentile, based on what version you have. Wait, but look at what? I am not ashamed of the gospel. That's awesome. For it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. That's awesome too. But to the Jew first and then to the Gentile or the Greek? What? Why? So you've been coming to my Acts class. Don't let me down. Why? Do what? The chosen people. What were the chosen people chosen for? What did the chosen people get that the rest of the world did not get at that particular time? Knowledge of God. And if you've been coming to the Acts class, this is, we're in Acts chapter 8 right now, but Acts 8, 9, and 10, very important in the book of Acts because you have a series of conversions there. You got, you can throw Simon the sorcerer and the Samaritans in there. You got the Ethiopian eunuch. You got Saul of Tarsus. You got Cornelius and his family. All right. Now, but for the previous 7 chapters, the gospel has been growing and brewing in Jerusalem. Why did the gospel start in Jerusalem? They were expecting it. Why did Jesus work in Jerusalem and surrounding areas? Because they were expecting the Messiah. It would make no sense for Jesus to come and go immediately to Gentile areas because they weren't expecting him. They were God's chosen people. They'd been entrusted with the law. They'd been entrusted with the prophets. They were supposed to have learned stuff from him so that when the Messiah came, they would recognize him. Some did, others didn't. A lot didn't. But even as the gospel spread, it brewed in Jerusalem for several years before it finally started moving out to other areas. But even look at where it started moving out in Acts chapter 8. You're going to Samaria, which is half Jewish, half Gentile. Then you're going to the Ethiopian eunuch. But the Ethiopian eunuch was either a God-fearer or a full-blown Jew himself because he's sitting in a chariot reading Isaiah after going to Jerusalem to worship. And then it's going to Cornelius' family. Well, Cornelius was also a God-fearer, so he knew something about God. Did he understand everything? Probably not. But he was aware of the idea of worshiping God. But he only got to experience it because people were able to have synagogues. It was the Jews who got it first. It just wasn't supposed to stay with them. But they were still the first recipients. So all that first paragraph is heavily Jewish because that's to whom the message went first. Okay, question or comment on, I could have done one more. Flip back to Romans chapter 2. Romans chapter 2 and verse 6 through 11. It says, he'll render to each one according to his works. To those who by patience and well-doing seek for glory and honor and immortality, he will give eternal life. But for those who are self-seeking and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, there will be wrath and fury. There will be tribulation and distress for every human being who does evil, the Jew first and also the Greek. But glory and honor and peace for everyone who does good, the Jew first and also the Greek. For God shows no partiality. How is it that you can have the Jew first and then the Greek, but then followed up immediately with the line, God shows no partiality? God doesn't show partiality, but he had to start with someone. Someone had to be first. And in this case, it was the Jews. Okay, back to Romans 14. So after that, we now have some angels appear. Sorry, what did I say?
That's all right. Go ahead.
I said Revelation 14. Whatever class this is. Come on.
Go.
Go. Oh no, people might be saying, stop.
Jeff, there's one thing.
One thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it's relevant, but we talked about the Jews and their place in the history of God and his people. Well, when we got to the New Testament and Jesus and that period of our Christianity, he put the 12 in a place that maybe the Jews were at one time.
Well, all
Because
the
the 12 started spreading.
and what nationality were the 12?
They were here and there.
They were Jews.
All Jews.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
Yeah. They were all Jews too. I mean, yeah.
Thomas. But anyway.
No.
That's right.
So yeah, they. But again, the whole idea though was that it started with them, but it wasn't supposed to stop with them. And so now we have 3 angels, 3 messages from 3 angels. And it says in verse 6, it says, "Then I saw another angel flying directly overhead with an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation and tribe and language and people. And he said with a loud voice, 'Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of water.'" So the angel number 1 comes, and it says an eternal gospel. What's the expiration date on the Bible? There isn't one. It's like a Twinkie. It lasts forever. No. The Bible is eternal. God's word is eternal. It is an eternal gospel. This is one of the things, even when I was a kid, I didn't understand it. Because in Dallas, we used to get Jehovah's Witnesses Mormon commercials. They say, come and place this call and receive your free copy of the next testament of the Christ. Why do I need another one? I haven't figured this stuff out yet. But that's the whole thing. We don't need another one. Truly, and hopefully you feel the same way I do. After we get to the end of Revelation, you'll feel the same way I do. We don't need anything else because it wraps it all up with a nice big bow. This is an eternal gospel to share with those who dwell on the earth. Now it says of every nation, tribe, language, and people, but it also said to those who dwell on the earth. Now you've been coming to this class for a while. What does that mean to those who dwell on the earth? Sinners, those who don't have a relationship with God. Look at what this angel is saying. The time has come, and it's the eternal gospel, to share the message with those who don't know God, of every nation and tribe and language and people. It is always time to share the gospel. Even in times of extreme persecution, which it might cost us extreme harm, it's still a time to share the gospel. I got to speak to some missionaries who worked with a persecuted church. They say that when times of persecution come, the witness is still there. They might be a little bit more quiet. You have to be a little bit more careful before you bring somebody in. They'll talk to people a long time first to see what their motives are, because if you're in a persecuted area, there's a chance that people are trying to smuggle in spies in order to blow the entire church and get everybody rounded up. You don't want that. So they'll work with somebody for a while before they bring them, but they're always looking. Even though the evangelism process might slow down just to keep people safe, they're still looking for people to share the gospel with. So even when those times come, evangelism should not stop. And again, it's interesting. It's not during the persecutions in which evangelism stops. It's when everything is nice and safe that we quit. Now, the nature of the message is to fear God, for he is worthy of glory as the Creator. Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth and sea and springs of water. Think about that statement. Worthy is God because his judgment is soon to come. What does it say about God if he has the power and the authority to judge the earth? Do what? Yeah, he's all powerful. But what makes him able?
What makes him
Yeah, well, not necessarily what makes him all powerful, but what gives him the right to be able to judge the earth? Huh? I love it when I ask questions and y'all look at me like I'm an idiot. Like, well, he's the creator, duh. Where are you at? But that's exactly the point. I love it. I love it when I get y'all to look at it. That means you're thinking too. He's the creator. That's why. But what do we say? Possessions is 9/10 of the law. Well, God has 10/10 of the world. It's His. Okay, I know. For example, Jeff Sims back there. He's a woodworker. You might know that. You might not know that. He does some beautiful work. Now, if you create a bowl, you showed me a very lovely bowl once that you made. You have all the right to go home and smash it if you want to, don't you? Why? Because it's yours. Doesn't matter to anybody else how much work you put into it or how long it took. I bake, as you can probably tell. I can bake a cake and then throw it on the floor if I want to and stomp it all to bits. I can do that because it's mine. I made it. Exactly. I know Sherry was kind of I didn't look over there for a reason, no. But if any of us have any sort of hobby or skill like that where you're able to make something, after you make it, you can do quite literally anything you want to with it if it's yours. That's the power of ownership. So anytime the Bible talks about what God's going to judge, what is that saying about God? How can God judge? How can God destroy anything? It only works if it's His. God has the power to do it. In fact, the first relationship that we have that God has with man is in creation. A lovely part of the Psalms where it talks about how God knitted us together. Beautiful verses in the Old Testament where it talks about how God knows every hair that is in our head. God knows us deep down. But before we were born, God knew who we were. The first person who ever knows us is God. And He knows us pre-birth. As soon as we are conceived, God says, I know that person. And He knows that. That's beautiful. People kind of take it and use it for anti-abortion and stuff, which, abortion is wrong. But don't let trying to argue a political point take the beauty away of what's trying to be said here. At the moment of conception, God knows us. The first person we ever know, before we even know our own mamas, God knows us. And that's beautiful. And so that's the first relationship that we have with God is through creation. Jesus becomes the manifestation of that relationship. God becoming man through creation being born. And so He's the creator. He's the owner. And He has come and worship Him who made heaven and earth and sea and springs of water. First memory verse we teach children, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created what? The heavens and the earth. God created. That's how the Bible starts. And I love it because people say, well, then where did God come from? The Bible doesn't tell us where God came from because the Bible's not about that. The Bible is about God working with the earth. And in the beginning, the first verse out of the first book of the Bible is God created the heavens and the earth. I'm not interested in where God came from. The point is God caused the earth to happen. That's the point of Genesis 1:1. He's the creator. Yeah, we can ask Him. If it's really bugging us, I used to have a teacher who used to say that, because sometimes some student tried to outsmart a teacher. You ever have something like that happen? And say, look, truth be told, if it's really bugging us that bad, when we get to heaven, we can ask God about it. All right? So He's the manifestation of the relationship Jesus is, but it's also worshiping God as creator. The gospel of the creator.